Welcome back to the channel, the place where we're making your Bronco your dream Bronco. Hey, if this is your first time here, I'd love to have you subscribe. Follow along with me as I am fully restoring this 1974 Ford Bronco. I paid $2,000 for this Bronco, and I'm keeping track of every dollar and every hour spent to, in the end, sell it and possibly make a profit. Now, today's video is honestly going to be kind of boring. It's not a sexy video at all. It's just, we're just going to be talking about what I put on the engine, the drivetrain, and just what everything is. Now, some of you might find that super helpful, just like I would have when I was doing this process, because you're looking at it and you're like, what's all the stuff? Like, what, you can think through it by looking at it, but I found that there's a lot of stuff that I was sitting there ordering, like, oh shoot, now I need this. And so I just wanted to kind of walk through what I did to the engine, what I did in the transmission, and the parts that I got, so that someone who is doing this as well could watch this and find it helpful. Or for some of you who are just like, I'm really curious what all John put on this thing. So I have another video where, I actually go through and I build this whole thing. That one's going to be the cool one, edited all flashy and, with music and everything. This one's just going to be pointing at parts and telling you what I got. Now, I'll also put links in the description to everything so that you could get it as well. The Amazon links are affiliate links, so those help me out, but everything else is just kind of Tom's Off-Road, Summit, that kind of thing, O'Reilly's. But yeah, starting with the engine. So I got this engine from Summit Racing. I was going back and forth on what engine to build, if it would be better to build the engine that came with this Bronco, or if I would go with something else. I kind of wanted to go with a Blueprint, but Blueprint was backed up, a few months for their 302 or 306. And so I was on Summit and I was looking, and this one was available to ship in like 3 days. And so I jumped on it. So the engine itself was $4,200. And then it had a $550 core charge that I'll get back when I send the stock Bronco engine back in it. But looking at the specs, this engine was for like a 1982 Ford Mustang. That's kind of what I narrowed it down to, and what I've been saying. Anytime I'm buying parts for it, I'm like, okay, 1982 Ford Mustang. With that, it comes with roller rockers instead of the flat tappet. So that's really like the big change that is different. It's still a 302. It's basically everything else is the same, except it has roller rockers, a little bit of technology thrown in there. That's the basis of all this. So let's go to the front here. So first, I've got on this side my Saginaw power steering pump that goes along with my steering box. I got that from Tom's Off-Road. It is a great kit to buy. Definitely worth it, because it comes with the power steering pump, comes with the power steering box, came with these two pulleys that go on the water pump and the crankshaft. The whole kit, it really comes with everything you need, and it's to upgrade to power steering. This Bronco didn't have power steering when I bought it. It was just the stock manual steering. So that was a great thing. It also came with the steering shafts. So that's really helpful. I haven't put those on yet. When I put the body back on, I'll work on those. But I did have to take the pulley off and put the new bracket on there so that it mounts up with the compressor. So this is the Vintage Air AC compressor, and that came with its own bracketry, and so it actually works really, really nicely all together. So both of those are from Tom's Off-Road. The belt is just from Amazon. It's a 51-inch belt, I believe. And so got that off of Amazon, 15 bucks. Like I said, got the two pulleys from Tom's Off-Road. The belt for the alternator I also got from Amazon, and that is a 28-inch belt, I believe. The alternator bracket is real simple as well. Got it off Amazon. I think it was like 15 bucks. But then moving on to the alternator, this is a 3G alternator. So my plan is I'm running EFI. I've got the transmission controller. I've got a bunch of new stuff that's going to draw more on the system. And so I didn't want to be like going to sell this and, oh, sorry, the battery's dead, you know, so this alternator is actually from a 1992 Ford Taurus, and you can get this at the parts store, but I'll put an Amazon link to where you can pick one of these up. And then connected to that is painless wiring harness. They make a harness for the 3G alternator that plugs right in and gives you the wires that you need. So I did that, but also I had to swap the pulley on the front of the alternator because this was for a Taurus, they had a serpentine belt set up. So I had to get a new pulley for that, and I'll put a link to that one. That was actually really hard to find. You had to measure for it, and we had to kind of figure out what we were going to do with that, but got a pulley that works and has the proper spacing and is right in line with the harmonic balancer pulley and the water pump pulley, but had to make a little spacer in the back to space it appropriately from the engine. Because if you remember on the stock alternator for the Bronco, it actually comes with that spacer, like that's built into it. So this one didn't come with that spacer, so I had to make that and put that together. Then moving on, I got a new water pump for this. The water pump that came with the ATK engine was obviously for a 1982 Ford Mustang. It was a reverse water pump, and the outlet was on this side. And so I went with the stock water pump that the outlet is right here on this side next to the pulleys. That's the stock location of it on a Bronco. So this water pump is for early Bronco. But what I had to do was on the timing chain cover that came from ATK, that I had to grind down. They had I think it was the harmonic balancer sensor bracket that goes on the timing cover. I had to grind that down to make room for the outlet for the water pump. Then went with a stock, water filler neck and thermostat for a Bronco. The coil is, all these coils are just generic. I think this is an Edelbrock something coil. I picked it up at O'Reilly's or something like that. Now moving up to the top of the engine, I've got the Edelbrock ProFlow 4, which is a fantastic EFI unit. It's actually port injected instead of throttle body injected. I feel like this system is one of the best that is on the market for the price. I paid $2,500 for this system. It came with a new manifold intake, it came with the throttle body, it came with a distributor, and then the entire wiring harness. Now with this system, like obviously you're adding EFI, so we've got O2 sensor in the exhaust, we've got a couple more things that are going on here than what you would have with a stock Bronco, but I put a whole Edelbrock install video out a couple years ago when I put it on my other Bronco. So if you're curious about that, definitely check all of that stuff out. Then we've got these chrome blingy valve covers. I'm not a huge fan of chrome. These might get changed out, but this is what came stock with the ATK engine, and so for now I've left those on. Moving down, got a fuel pressure regulator, and that is obviously to monitor the fuel that's coming into the EFI system. That's a kind of a requirement when you're running an EFI system. So you got your fuel coming in, you got your return that's going back to your tank. In the throttle body, I have a TPS sensor. That came with the Edelbrock, but also I have a 4R70W transmission, which also needs a TPS reading. So when I got the kit for the transmission, it came with an extra, like a little Y fitting for the TPS sensor where you could plug it in and split it off. I like that a little bit better than just hacking into wiring. And so I like that the US Shift controller came with that option. So that's where I've got my TPS sensor. Yeah, and then spark plugs. So I went with the MSD superconductor spark plugs. It doesn't make more power. Spark plugs don't make more power, but I went with a spark plug wire that I knew was super shielded, because when you're running an EFI system, you want something that isn't going to interfere. You've now added electronics up top. And so if your spark plug wires are close to other wiring, then there can be some interference going on there, and you don't want that when you're running an EFI system. So when I put my Phytech, an old EFI system on my other Bronco, I had just some cheapo spark plug wires, and I kept getting this interference, and it was something that took me a while to figure out what it was, and it turned out to be the spark plug wires. So I know these are good. The MSD superconductors, they're thick, they're shielded, and they do really well. I think I paid $100 for them off Amazon. What I don't love about them is they don't really fit. So I don't know, maybe one day I'll get the ones that you can cut to length and do that. But for now, these are on there, and they're gonna work great once I finally fire this thing up. Then moving down, we've got our shorty headers. Got those from Tom's Off-Road as well. The shorty headers look great. They are ceramic coated black. And I'm a black kind of fan on the engine and on the engine bay, as you can see behind me. So yeah, I went with that, and I really like those headers. Now, one thing that I forgot to mention was when I was putting all of this together, I actually went with ARP bolts. ARP has some incredible bolts, and they really are stronger than, just your normal grade bolts. But what I really liked about it was they look really nice. So it was $200 for the kit. It came with intake manifold bolts, valve cover bolts, water pump. I mean, everything, all that you need to do this. There's some that, I still haven't changed out, like the compressor bolts. Those came with the compressor. ARP doesn't have a kit for that, but most of the bolts that are on here now are ARP, and I think they look really nice. They're 12-point head bolts. Most of them are 7/16 head, and I really like that. To me is just one of those things, getting all those matching, and knowing that you've got the best bolt on the market. That is a really nice upgrade that I was glad to go with. And then moving on, right down here, which you can't really see, is the starter. And I actually got that for a 2001 Ford Explorer, because that is my transmission. It's a 4R70W out of a 2001 Ford Explorer. If you're getting a 4R70W transmission, you have to make sure that it's for the V8. They also made either, I think it's a V6 or a 6-cylinder model for it. So you have to make sure that it's for the V8. Mine happened to be all-wheel drive Ford Explorer from 2001. But that's the starter that I went with as well, which actually has on it the starter solenoid, which is kind of nice, because that's something then that I don't have to have on the inner fender. When I put this back in the engine bay, kind of cleans up the engine bay a little bit, just those little things. So I was happy about that. So the starter is for a 2001 Ford Explorer. All right, so moving down to the transmission, you can see I've still got wiring everywhere, got transmission cooler lines. But like I said, this is the 4R70W out of a 2001 Ford Explorer. But to make it work with the Bronco, or to make it kind of play nicely with the Bronco, I went to my buddies at US Shift and got their quick 4 controller, because this is an electronic transmission. You could get an AOD that's not electronic as well. But this is a nice, the 4R70W, the W stands for wide. So it has a little bit wider of a gear ratio than the AOD or the AODE. With the US shift system, you've got your wiring that goes to the transmission, and like I said, hooks up to some stuff in the engine. One of the things I don't like is you actually do have to splice some wires into the harness of your EFI system. That's kind of a bummer to me. Again, don't love that, but working on that to get it all working and playing nicely together. With the 4R70W, if you're doing a conversion, because basically what I'm doing is I'm putting the Dana 20 on the back end of this transmission. Dana 20 was the stock transfer case for the Bronco, and so I want to keep that and run that. So with that, you have to change some stuff inside of the transmission. Now, I didn't do that. My buddy Ian did that. I have no idea how to get into a transmission and change that stuff, but Tom's Off-Road sells a kit that basically gives you an adapter from Advanced Adapters that bolts right up to the 4R70W. So that's what this is right here. And then that bolts up to the Dana 20. But inside of the 4R70W, you had to change the output shaft so that it will mate up with the Dana 20. And then there's a couple other things that we did because I want to have I want to still use my shift column, the shifter on the column. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but basically we had to change the shift selector on the 4R70W, which was also inside the transmission. There's some stuff there that we had to change. And a couple other things that we did, and Ian just kind of went through the transmission, made sure everything was good, it looked good, and put it all back together. Like I said, we had to fab up some transmission cooler lines. The stock lines don't work. That worked on the C4 transmission, which came in these Broncos. So we had to kind of fab up some new transmission cooler lines. We're actually running them on the other side to kind of get them out of the way over here. But we've got that. And then Tom's Off-Road also sells a cross member for the 4R70W. And what that cross member does is it will actually hold in place the adapter that goes on the back of the 4R70W. So really nice setup there. The only bummer is we had to grind down the washer and the bushing to get it to fit. So not a perfect fit there, but honestly, that's a pretty easy change. Then moving down, we're going to have the Dana 20 down here at the end. That's going to be stock. Then we're going to measure for our drive shafts, get some probably Tom Woods drive shafts. Ian also built the exhaust, and this is the MagnaFlow exhaust. I forget which one, but I'll put a link to it. I don't know how it sounds because we haven't fired this up, but it has its own resonator. Might be cool, might not be. We'll find out. Yeah, really pleased with how the exhaust all lined up. And Ian did an amazing job. Really just whole custom exhaust going in this Bronco. So one last thing that I forgot to mention was for the fuel lines, I ended up going with the black steel braided. I don't think it's steel braided. It might have steel in there, but they're all AN fittings. So all the fittings are AN all the way back. I think it's all 6 AN. And then just been looming the wiring and all of that. The idea is we're going to get this to where, when you drop the body on it, then you can pull the wires through and we're going to be good to go. So again, I'll put links in the description so that you can take a look at, poke around all the stuff that I got. But yeah, that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you next time.